Michigan International Speedway plays host here tonight to the MSRA Reaper Speedlab Truck Series 21st race of the season. Good evening, everybody. Welcome here as we are in the Irish Hills, getting ready for 100 laps of racing at this 2-mile speedway slash super speedway, the penultimate race of the regular season on the eve of the playoffs. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Alex Kolonix. And Alex, I think like maybe the biggest story we got coming into this race is this close to the playoffs, we don't have any playoff storylines because basically everyone that's in the field here tonight is either safely locked in, cannot point their way in, or are not running for points. So it's basically 11 drivers where the boys have at it, nothing to lose, get that checkered flag attitude tonight.
Yeah, and that'll make it fun because, hey, why preserve your vehicle when all you got to do is go for the win? We might see guys race a lot more aggressive for each and every position because pretty much the only thing you're going for is to get yourself right at the very front of the field and get yourself in the spotlight. So that should be something we're going to be looking out for.
We kept our eyes on qualifying just moments ago, and only two drivers elected to put down times, and subsequently, there your front row. Robert Shin going to get his first pole of the season alongside of Wesley Jeanette. Everybody else on back electing not to put down a qualifying lap, kind of letting the qualifying order randomly put them in their starting positions. And maybe a reason for that is, they've got their truck set up and they want to see what it's going to be like back in traffic, how quickly they can make their way up to the front of the field in that optimal clean air.
Yeah, and I mean, for the guys who qualified, hey, just pad up the stat sheets, get yourself a pole position to say, hey, I got a pole position that year. Look at me. I'm doing good. But these guys, it looks like they're just going to have some fun today. This is a racetrack that in these vehicles does not race the way it does in the other vehicles here on the iRacing service. It's a lot more gripped up, it's a lot more high speed, and it's a lot tighter racing, especially with these open setup vehicles.
We showed you the front row there that took time. Boyd Hogan qualifies in third. Jonathan Delaney fourth. Will Cooley, Agnew Phillip back in row three. Nathan Jurgensen, who was the fastest in practice, he lines up in seventh. Looks like Braxton Dewis will be alongside of him in eighth, and Chuck Waldrop ninth, Patrick Stein 10th, and Ryan Strunk in 11th. However, you may have noticed rolling off the grid, it didn't look like 11 trucks, and you'd be correct, only 7 drivers rolled off the grid. Delaney, Cooley, Phillip, and Jurgensen. I don't know if the strategy for them is going to start on pit road or if they're just going to miss the green flag here. So right now, looks like it's only going to be 7 trucks that are going to take the start of this race.
This is going to be the most intense 7-car race for a victory you have ever seen here at Michigan International Speedway. You would normally be worried about this at other racetracks, but honestly, I'm interested to see how this works out.
Yeah, Boyd Hogan rolling off P3, looking for his 8th win on the season. Everybody else, they're looking for their first checkered flag on the air. As the green flag flies, Robert Shin going to lead us to the start-finish line, but we got ourselves some 2-truck tandems going on here into turn 1.
And this is just what we're going to be seeing a lot of throughout the race today. We're just going to be seeing guys utilize that draft to race a little bit side by side, get these big runs, and possibly throw it 3 wide because, hey, have at it. There's nothing else to really lose for these guys.
Absolutely going to be a very interesting race in terms of strategy, I have to feel as well, because one would certainly think with it only being 7 trucks and the wide multi-group racing you can have here at Michigan, we are probably going to see some long green flag runs here tonight, which means that pit strategy in the closing stages of this race could be the difference into whether you're going to win this race or come home in the runner-up position. We do know that there is going to be a stage caution that will come out at the completion of lap 26, but for the moment, Wesley Jeanette continues to point the way. Robert Shin up there on the top side, and already you're starting to see some slide jobs being implemented here.
Hey, well, it's just the way you kind of make passes around here. You want to run that second lane, carry the speed around the racetrack. Might see a bunch of guys run the third lane as they're doing kind of right there a little bit. And just keep up the speed going around this track. It's pretty much full throttle on these trucks. And when you run the bottom, you kind of check yourself up a little bit. So you've seen these guys just keep up momentum. And if they need to go to the bottom, they pull the slider to make sure they could get back up there.
See way back there, Braxton Dewis, last time by through 1 and 2, he went up to that, we'll call it the 5th groove there. You can kind of differentiate them by the seams in the corner, and I don't think he got the wall, but certainly was way up out of the groove, lost a ton of momentum. was about 2.3 seconds back, has now closed it up to about 1.5 seconds behind the truck in front of him, Patrick Stein. So if he can maybe catch the slipstream, get a little stiff up draft, he might be able to get back up here in this lead group.
Could just be a tire saving strategy. Just keep your tires underneath it for the long run. This racetrack does have some surprisingly high tire wear.
Riding on board with Boyd Hogan, who's side by side with Robert Shin for second place. Nice run there with that side draft down the front straightaway. Almost got to the left rear quarter panel of race leader Wesley Jeanette. But it seems like here in the early going, these drivers realizing that the tires are going to start to heat up, the groove is going to move up, and most of these drivers right now kind of running that middle line, maybe the 2.5 to 3rd groove, and they're getting that good run off of 2 and 4, getting that optimal straightaway speed. Boyd Hogan trying to hook the bottom, but he just can't seem to get the power down on corner exit.
Yeah, well, the one good thing for him is he is getting a little bit of clean air running down there, and that could help you over the longer runs around here rather than burning up your tires trying to run in somebody's draft. But just at the moment, this early on in the run, you might want to just stay in that draft and keep it.
Wesley Jeanette, Robert Shin right now, first and second, would be the only drivers coming into this race running for points that are below the cut line. But as mentioned, both of them 20th in points for Stein, or make that for 22nd in points for Shin, and for Wesley Jeanette, he I believe is 25th in points. Neither one of them would be able to accumulate enough points, stage points or otherwise, between this week and in 2 weeks' time at the Indianapolis Raceway Park to make their way above the cut line and into the playoffs. A big thing that I was kind of looking at coming into this race, and I feel that this is going to be a talking point for most of this week, is there's a lot of drivers that come into this race up inside the top 10 in points in playoff positions that we haven't seen for over a month. We've got Daniel Simmons, Jamie Knopf, TJ Crampton, our winner from the season opener at Daytona, two-time winner Andrew Navarro. They've kind of gone MIA. The big question seems to be, are they going to be back once the playoffs begin, since they're currently sitting above the cut line? Or if not, what happens to that playoff grid? Because right now, in maybe the last 3 weeks, we've only seen maybe 25% of what's going to be our playoff field even take a green flag.
Yeah, and that's kind of conducive to all the things that's been going on around iRacing recently. You know, a couple of those guys, you have to deal with them going through the Road to Pro series at the moment, so that's where a lot of their focus is going to be. And you have a lot of guys who just simply decided that with some other competitors not showing up, that they weren't going to show up either. So now we're going to see guys who do show up on a week-to-week basis kind of be able to hone their skills at the front of the field when normally they might be a little bit outclassed. And that's something to see whether or not the guys who were fast previous stay fast, and the guys who were slower pick up the pace.
Ryan Strunk saw him take the lead for a moment, got crossed over by Wesley Jeanette. Strunk will go back to the point once again, but he's bringing Boyd Hogan along with him. Woo, slid way up there off of turn 2, almost got into that outside safer barrier, and that little slip up brings Jeanette right back to his inside once again. So some nice back and forth here between the 77 and the 74. Boyd Hogan waiting in the wings, and wow, that 74 wicked loose there through the center of 3 and 4, nearly went around in front of the 96. Nice save.
Yeah, that was rough right there. He rode that right across the seams that you can see on this racetrack. That'll really loosen up your vehicle if you catch it wrong, or tighten it up if you catch it on the right side tires. Gotta watch out for that, because that's where you see a lot of guys slip up, and right there you see him actually get a little bit twitchy there, running in between the seams just again.
And maybe this is why we're seeing the aggressive racing here early on, knowing we have at least one guaranteed caution here today at the completion of our first stage. And so, you know, try some things out, see what your truck is like in the early going, and then when you come to pit road, make the adjustments accordingly.
Yeah, I imagine for a couple of these guys, they might want to be making some pretty massive adjustments, but I have been looking specifically at the two drivers at the back of this pack, Patrick Stein and Chuck Waldrop. They've just kind of been hanging out in a single file line while the rest of them have been racing, and have been able to keep up with them, not really losing too much time. I want to see how they do on the longer runs, because they had not abused their tires racing each other.
And Chuck Waldrop, a few races ago, pointed his way up inside of the top 10, and here tonight will look to increase that cushion between himself and the cut line to advance into the playoffs. Braxton Dewis, on the other hand, we were talking about him possibly being able to catch back up after the slip up he had in the early going over in 1 and 2. That's not been the case. He's now dropped over 9 seconds behind the race leader. But you talked about, potential strategy with the tires. These drivers here tonight, limited number of sets of Goodyears. They start in the set that they took the green with and only have 2 additional sets waiting on pit road for them. I mean, we know they're probably going to change the tires on this upcoming stage caution. That leaves them only 1 more set in what's going to be the remaining roughly 72 some odd laps.
Well, essentially, we're going to have a pretty simple strategy come out of that, as well as what we're going to be getting is pretty much everybody coming in at the caution, making their adjustments, trying to find the extra little bit of pace as you see Hogan trying to go around the outside for the lead. But the thing as well is going to be, you're probably only going to get 1 green flag pit stop if this stays green. And so the gamble could be hoping that with 7 vehicles, some accident ends up happening and you can capitalize on a brand new set of tires, and from that point onwards, almost nobody can catch you if we've reached the green flag pit stops.
Well, you saw it there through 1 and 2 when Hogan made the pass on Ryan Strunk. Strunk went into a 4-wheel slide off the second corner, was able to gather it back up. So the sun's been beaten down here on this 2-mile racetrack all day long, and these drivers are starting to feel the effects of it now as the tires heat up. The grip's starting to go away, and these guys are out there running at over 170 miles per hour, practically on ice skates.
Yeah, and that's one of the keys around this racetrack is that even though these trucks have a lot of side force, down force, a lot of air pushing those tires into the racetrack, it's still very difficult to keep the right rear on this vehicle. This racetrack is very, very loose center off, almost in every other vehicle you drive around here, and so it's very difficult to keep that right rear tire cool and keep the tire wear from going out of control.
You saw it right there, triple-digit degree temperatures here for the track surface, 113 degrees. So you combine that with the tires losing grip and getting slippery. It's not a lot of fun for these guys on the long run. As someone I think might have gotten the wall there off of turn 2, Wesley Jeanette, I think it was in the 74. You see Chuck Waldrop and Patrick Stein make evasive darts to the left down the back straightaway to avoid him. He was able to keep it pointing in the right direction, certainly lost momentum, and appears he may have some right side damage.
Yeah, pretty significant right side damage at that. That is essentially at a racetrack this fast is going to pretty much take Jeanette out of this event for the rest of the day, as that's a lot of damage to have to try and fix with only a single caution, guaranteed caution.
Obviously, this racetrack, the somewhat worn-out surface, it's not like Daytona, it's not like Talladega.
Oh, Shin just got in the wall out of turn 2. He just nipped the wall I saw from the 3rd position.
Gonna stay in touch, at least with the top 2, it looks like. But, yeah, back to the point you were talking about there. I mean, this may not necessarily be your typical super speedway like Daytona or Talladega, but in terms of aerodynamics, the fundamentals are exactly the same. You want that car to be aerodynamically perfect. Even the slightest amount of damage can be like a parachute, losing you miles per hour on the straightaway. And you see right there, looks like the damage maybe around the right front on the Robert Shin machine. So, the strong car that he had in the early going may start to go away with that apparent damage.
Yeah, I mean, that previous lap alone, he lost 6/10 from making contact with the wall, and the rest of the lap after that, have to see what his lap time is this time by, but it looks like the damage is definitely affecting him.
Boyd Hogan, as we mentioned, he's obviously solidly into the playoffs, current points leader in the overall standings, 7 trips to victory lane so far, but this is an important race for him here today, and the fact that he can take and rack up even more playoff points with only 2 races remaining in the regular season. The stage winner gets a playoff point, and then it's 5 playoff points for every win that you get. Right now, Boyd Hogan comes into tonight's event with 40 playoff points. Imagine what kind of a points lead he's going to have once the playoff standings are reformatted, and he'd like to see a guaranteed cushion advancing him maybe into the next round of the playoffs before he even takes the green flag in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, something almost unheard of to accumulate so many points going into and through a playoff run, but when you have such a dominant performance like that, like you said, maybe 7 wins on the season, that's just par for the course, I suppose.
We're about 8 laps away from when that stage caution will come out. And right now, Boyd Hogan, Robert Shin, Patrick Stein, Chuck Waldrop, Braxton Dewis, those drivers running for points. They would obviously get stage points, with the top 10 getting points and only 7 drivers right now in this event. Ryan Strunk has not exactly let Boyd Hogan get away, though. After Hogan got the lead, I thought maybe having that clean air, we were going to see the gap grow increasingly fast, but he's only been able to open up by about 0.8 of a second. Strunk hasn't let him increase the gap by over a second yet.
Yeah, Boyd has only been very minorly faster lap by lap than Strunk. So Strunk is only one minor adjustment away from keeping that same exact pace, and kind of watching his own onboard from my position, he doesn't seem to be struggling too much with the handling, possibly slightly a little bit loose in the draft of Boyd Hogan. But as long as he could adjust a little bit of that out, he should be in a good spot here to try and go for the victory.
Boyd Hogan continues to lead. Of course, a driver's going to be looking forward in 2 weeks' time to the regular season finale when the playoff grid is locked. And what a track to do it at, the Indianapolis Raceway Park. Other people know it as Lucas Oil Raceway. I mean, a short track to end it off. Now here tonight and the last couple of weeks, we've not really had that much of a storyline of drivers trying to point their way into the playoff grid, but we have been keeping tabs on Richard Malugani. We saw him last week. We saw him a couple of weeks ago start to inch his way closer to that cut line. I mean, if he shows up next week, there could be, or 2 weeks time I should say, there could be some late season drama into possibly Andrew Navarro, 2-time winner, getting knocked out of the playoffs. But again, that all depends on if Malugani shows up for that race at IRP.
Yes, and if Navarro decides not to show up at the same time. So, I mean, you never know what can happen in this series. Drivers kind of missing in action. Could somebody just show up for a one-off race just to decide, hey, I'll just start going for the championship now. I've seen it happen before where drivers will have a really, really good, strong start to the season, decide already at the start that they weren't going to run for the championship, but see when later on that they're still somehow in contention for it late in the season, they'll come back and make a championship run. So we don't know who could show up and just suddenly decide to make a playoff run at the end of this year.
Here's Braxton Dewis, right now running 7th of the 7 drivers. Has not yet been able to really recover from the slide he had up there in 1 and 2 back in the first 5 laps of this race, and it kind of looks like he hasn't even really tried to recover. I think you're right. After he had that slight mistake, he's just basically in conserve mode. It might be testing out just exactly how well he can save the tires for when we eventually begin the second and final stage of this race. May be able to utilize that strategy to his benefit, to maybe be off sequence from everybody else, and might have the race winning strategy as a result.
Yes, I will give him credit. He has been one of the most consistent drivers lap to lap. It's just that the problem has been the consistency has been a little bit off of the leader's pace at the moment, so he might have to make a little bit of an adjustment to try and find that extra lap time he needs to run up with these leaders. But as of right now, it just looks like it's in Boyd Hogan's hands. The last few laps over Ryan Strunk, he's been a full 10th faster almost each time, despite Ryan having to crash. So it's starting to really spread out.
Right on board here with our race leader. Watch the hand motion here going through the corners. That last time there through 1 and 2 looked pretty steady. Almost has it pinned down there to the bottom, running about maybe a half groove higher. Trying to straddle the seams there, avoid the slickness of those seams through 3 and 4. Brings it right down here to the start-finish line, as close to the white line as he possibly can. Doesn't go to the apron. I was noticing a couple of drivers when they were practicing qualifying laps, they went down there below the apron. Now, I'm not necessarily certain. You can educate me on this, if by the iRacing standards, if that's considered out of bounds, or if you can go down there.
Oh, Boyd Hogan blew up! Boyd Hogan blew up!
Oh my gosh! We were on board with him right when that happened. And the 96, the dominant truck up to this point, who was looking like he was in line to pick up the stage victory, smoke erupting from underneath his Toyota, and his day is over.
It was looking to develop after this coming caution to become a great race between him and Ryan Strunk for the victory of this race. The two of them extremely close together, but just absolute disaster for Boyd Hogan. A sudden engine failure, a little bit too much tape on the front end of that vehicle has ended his day right there and then. And, well, the rest of the competition doesn't look like they have anything for the driver of the 77. This may be an easy victory as long as nobody finds some crazy lap time with some adjustments.
Yeah, I think now everybody, to your point, I'm thinking as well, maybe a little too much tape on the front end of that 96, causing the overheating and the eventual grenading of the engine for Boyd Hogan. And now I'll bet everybody is kind of second guessing themselves of, did I put too much tape on my truck? Because as we've documented this season, this is an open setup league. Drivers can make the adjustments, whether it be tape, whether it be aero, whether it be wedge adjustments, track bar adjustments, you name it. They can basically put themselves in their own little comfort zone of how they feel they want to approach the racetrack with the setup underneath the hood. And apparently, in the case of Boyd Hogan, maybe a little bit over adjustment too much.
What I was surprised about with him blowing up is how deep into the run it was when he did that. Typically, when you overdo the tape, it'll get better as the run goes on if you're really, really close. But to have it blow up like that 25 laps into the run is just absolutely bizarre, because by that point typically you're settled in, if not going slower than before and not using as much engine heat.
Caution out. Stage is complete. Ryan Strunk is going to pick up the stage victory. Not running for points, so the playoff point is basically null and void here for the stage victor. But Strunk, Shin, and Patrick Stein, the top three here at the completion of stage one. And as we expected, Boyd Hogan, he brought it down pit road. They looked underneath the hood, see what they could do. Apparently, though, it looks like his day is over. They have pushed him behind the wall, so he would get credited for 7th place here tonight. But as we mentioned, big opportunity here tonight to be able to continue to accumulate playoff points, and just a couple laps shy of picking up that one playoff point with the stage victory. The engine goes south on Boyd Hogan, and now this just kind of seems to throw the door wide open, because we saw that Robert Shin had a strong car in the early going. Wesley Jeanette led a couple of laps. Strunk led after the 96 had his issues. And I don't think we yet really know what Braxton Dewis has got, because he spent most of this first stage just kind of mired back there after the slip-up. So some of these guys now, they may have a big opportunity to pick up that checkered flag that they didn't have about 5 laps ago.
Yeah, my biggest problem at the moment is a couple of the guys you mentioned there, Jeanette and Shin, they've gotten into the outside wall and given themselves some damage. I also see a very slight bit of damage on Dewis as well. And unlike the rest of them, Strunk has a perfectly clean truck, and at a racetrack this fast, like we talked about earlier, that's going to affect their speed a lot, especially down the straightaways.
Let's remember, too, in the case of Ryan Strunk, nothing to lose. He's just out trophy hunting, so no doubt he's going to play the strategy that best accommodates him. And everybody else, if he's able to keep the clean air for the remainder of this race, they're going to have to maybe try something different, especially if it comes down to pit strategy, as battle off pit road, easily going to be won by Ryan Strunk. Like Chuck Waldrop may come out in second place, as Shin, Jeanette, Stein, they're sitting on pit road a little bit extra time getting that damage repaired. Extended his day for Braxton Dewis as well, so maybe when I saw him slide up there in 1 and 2, he may have actually gotten the outside wall and may have been nursing that damage the entirety of this first stage. So Ryan Strunk will be the one to lead us back to green. Waldrop will be second, and Patrick Stein was third, coming off of pit lane.
Yeah, of all the vehicles that did get damaged there, it did look like Shin had the least, and looking at his vehicle right at the moment, it doesn't look too terrible. There's a very, very slight crinkle at the right front hood area. So he might still be in contention for this. We saw him have a pretty strong vehicle versus Strunk earlier on. He just got into the outside wall and kind of lost pace after that. So interested to see how he ends up working out. Dewis still has a little bit of right front damage. Again, unsure where his true pace is because he lost the pack early on. So another driver that we're going to be watching out for to see how they perform. And it actually looks like Dewis is back to pit road, so might have a little bit more damage to repair on the vehicle.
Lights out atop the pace truck already, as we didn't have anybody a lap down. Didn't need the extra lap of pacing, so we'll be going green, it looks like, with 69 laps to go. So roughly about 70 laps remaining. It's going to be interesting to see. We know that they're going to have to make at least one more pit stop before the conclusion of this race, probably take on that final set of Goodyear tires waiting for them. But it will be interesting to see. We don't know what the fuel window is for these guys. So do they extend it as far as they can possibly go on a tank of fuel before eventually coming to pit road? Or do you kind of look at this final stage to the checkers of splitting it in half? 35 laps, come to pit road and run the final 35 laps on what you've got left.
Well, one of the big keys with this racetrack is the tire wear is very excessive lap to lap. You kind of hit a certain lap point where all of a sudden you start losing time lap by an extreme amount. I mean, these guys from the very beginning of the run to the end of the run fell off over a second on pace. And so one of the big keys is trying to pit later than your competitors and keeping up the extra pace throughout the rest of the run. So we might see guys extend it out to around 40 laps deep. I've noticed tanks can go, so that's where I'll be seeing them pit.
6 drivers remain here for the final run to the checkered flag. Hopefully have seen our only caution here tonight as Ryan Strunk control truck got a great launch. Everybody else kind of caught sleeping, and he's going to have 2, maybe 3 truck lengths over Chuck Waldrop going into turn 1. He brought up the point of trying to come to pit road as late as possible. Now Ryan Strunk, right now, he's got the benefit of clean air. Everybody else behind him is going to have to deal with that dirty air, catching him one thing, passing him another. But is he at a disadvantage in terms of that potential strategy coming up? Say somebody's able to stay within striking distance, he comes to pit road, they've got the option of whether to follow him down or not. Basically, whatever he does, everyone behind him might potentially do the opposite.
I'd say he actually has the main advantage because there does become a point where if you go too late into the run, there's not enough laps left to use the newer tires to catch up. So all Ryan Strunk has to do is maintain this track position, and if somebody pits behind him to try and jump ahead of him, he just pits the next lap, or even 2 laps later, and gets a bigger advantage. But if the run goes deep enough, say we're lap 73, 74, there's only about 25 laps left once you go green, he might just decide to hit right there and take whatever advantage he's going to get.
I don't know, this 7 of Chuck Waldrop, he's looking pretty racy. He's been able to keep in touch with the 77 of Ryan Strunk, and he is starting to little by little close in, despite the fact that he's been running in the same craft, almost in the same identical lane as Ryan Strunk. I mean, here tonight, Chuck Waldrop is in line to do something that he has not done all season long, and that's finish inside of the top 5. I mean, what a win it would be in that regard, but also might be able to pick up his first win of the season.
And that's big, week by week. When you kind of get these opportunities, even in these kind of smaller races, you still are competing against some of the guys you've been competing with week by week, so regardless of how many guys there are in the field, you're still going to end up beating them if you end up winning this race, and it looks like he is running up on the back bumper of Strunk at the moment. He's got some pretty good pace going on. It looks like he does struggle entry to center of the corner. I'm noticing that's where he's losing.
We know that Robert Shin, he had that damage from getting into the wall during that first stage, but despite that fact, I know draft played a little part into it. He just ran his fastest lap of the race, and he's not that far back behind the top 2, so don't count the 73 out just yet.
Yeah, could be making a little bit of an adjustment to try and run a little bit quicker, but as long as he hangs on to that draft, which is about 8 or 9/10 of a second back from the driver ahead, he'll be able to keep pace with them if his truck has it in it. And who knows, maybe we could see the drivers ahead of him burn up their stuff a little bit, maybe get a little bit loose while he gets the advantage of having the straightaways.
Braxton Dewis has moved his way up into 4th after running 6th the entirety of that first stage. He's now under fire from Patrick Stein, who shows the nose down the back straightaway, but could not get to the left rear quarter panel. Stein in 5th, and Wesley Jeanette still with that damage, a lot of right side damage. He's now mired back in 6th, and looks like he is losing ground rapidly. So unless some of these other drivers get damaged, he will more than likely finish there this evening, as it's a 3-way battle now for the lead. About 5-6 truck lengths separate the podium drivers.
Yeah, you do have to watch out though for the guys running in the dirty air behind the other vehicles. It'll get tight entry to center of the corner, and you can really burn off your right front tire, especially down here in 3 and 4. It gets really, really tight right in the center of the corner. These guys are going to have to watch out not to burn up their stuff and allow Strunk to pull ahead.
And let's remember with Ryan Strunk, when he was battling with Boyd Hogan back during that first stage, getting staged to the race, everybody looked relatively glued to the racetrack, but we got about 7, 8, 9 laps in. We saw a lot of drivers slipping and sliding around. Ryan Strunk was one of those drivers who went into a 4-wheel slide. So more than likely might have made an adjustment here under that stage caution to avoid that situation. But, you know, when we start to get 10 laps into this run, do we start to see him lose that rear end grip again? And is that where Waldrop and Shin can maybe take advantage?
Well, absolutely. The issue is going to be unlike last time, where he was having a lot of racing going back and forth across the racetrack that typically puts a lot more strain on these tires. He's been out in the clean air the whole time running his own lane, and while early on there might have been a little bit of a challenge, he's starting to pull a bigger and bigger gap lap by lap. It doesn't look like he has any pressure from behind. He could just run whatever line he wants and not really abuse his tires.
Strunk now 4/10 of a second back to Waldrop. Battle for second place, maybe closest battle on the racetrack up towards the front of the field. And maybe Braxton Dewis and Patrick Stein can get up here and make it a 4-man fight for the runner-up position. But closing in on 40 laps complete here tonight at Michigan. Next to last race of the regular season before the playoffs begin. Ryan Strunk, your leader here in the Irish Hills. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, but you won't miss a bit of the action. We're going FRN side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCar. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and T. You can expect high speed, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Welcome you back here to Michigan. You saw a lot of action take place there during that commercial break. Robert Shin got around Chuck Waldrop for second place. Big slide for Braxton Dewis. And Alex, I believe you went back and looked at that on what happened with the 8 truck.
Well, what had happened there is one of the big things at this racetrack is you can see as these drivers are going around, you'll see those dark black lines there on the racetrack. Those are the seams that kind of seal the lanes together and stop it from having a big gap. The problem is when these nice slick tires, they don't have tread like your typical, commuter car does. So when these guys go over that area, it's real slick and they really lose grip. What he did, he tapped those left side tires right on top of it and got really, really loose.
Robert Shin started this race from the pole position, and he is little by little closing up on Ryan Strunk. 2 laps ago, he was about a 1/10.5 faster. This last time by about a 1/10 quicker. So he is whittling away at the 77's lead. And Robert Shin, he's only made 7 starts this season, but in those 7 starts, he's had 4 of the finishes inside of the top 10. So Ryan Strunk, for right now, while it may look like he's out for a Sunday drive, he may have some company very, very soon.
Yeah, I've been kind of keeping a tab on Strunk a little bit, and I've been noticing he's been getting a little bit loose, especially down here in 1 and 2. Your vehicle's set on the looser side, and he hits it right there, that seam. He's been touching that lap after lap, and it's been getting his vehicle looser and looser, and it's been really causing him a lot of issues. Though I'm starting to see come into frame a little bit. Couple drivers behind, Chuck Waltrip, Patrick Stein, they're kind of bringing themselves back into the fray here. The field's starting to close up here for the top 4.
And 77 running the low line there through the corners. I mean, with that loose sensation he's experiencing, are there any adjustments he can make in terms of the line he runs, or would moving up the racetrack just kind of exacerbate the loose sensation?
Typically the biggest problem I notice here is that if you're tight right in the center of the corner here, it really exaggerates how loose off you get, because you'll go through the corner and the front tires will finally bite up right on the exit. You'll get really, really loose. But the only real thing you can do if you feel like you have a good balance is just make sure you don't get those left side tires on the seam, or try not to get the right side tires on the seam in the center of the corner. You pretty much just have to try and keep your vehicle within these lanes and keep yourself off of those slick areas.
Ryan Strunk, maybe the first driver all day we've seen put all 4 tires down below that line on the front straightaway, down onto the apron, which apparently here in this series is not considered out of bounds. Some series consider an out of bounds area, some do not. In NASCAR, it's not an out of bounds area, but does that gain you anything down there? Like, I know that there's some times that you can maybe gain 100th or 2 down there if the drivers behind you don't use it, but I would also assume that that would give you a rather shallow entry into turn number 1.
Well, typically your problem is not your entry down in the 1, but it's just your general straightaway speed. The problem is, when you run that apron, it's got a lot less banking than the rest of the front straightaway. And the transition from the apron back onto the racetrack is typically quite rough to go across. And so you really scrub off a lot of speed doing that, but you gain that speed down the early part of the straightaway because you're running the shorter lines. So typically you'll only really see that lane be used while guys are trying to race each other, trying to get themselves clear of another driver if they have a big run on them. But it's not typically very advantageous to run that on your own. Most of what you do is run that bottom lane next to
And you see the gap from first to second on board with Robert Shin. Roughly about half a second. 8 of Braxton Dewis has hit pit lane. Now, there was the talk about maybe these drivers splitting the final stage in half. This would be about 15 laps too early to follow that kind of strategy. I'm wondering if this is a scheduled or unscheduled stop for the driver third in points.
I would have to believe it's an unscheduled stop. I don't even believe he could make it to the finish of the race on fuel from pitting at this point. So this is kind of just a almost nonsensical gamble at the moment. He could just be giving up here, or maybe he's got some damage, or his truck is handling so poorly he's got to come down now. But starting to see a lot of these guys get pretty loose. I've noticed our leader get loose. I just saw Waldrop get a little bit loose just then. These guys are really flirting with that seam on the bottom, and it's really starting to make their trucks handle very wildly.
Side by side going to be for third. Patrick Stein looking low on Chuck Waldrop. And yeah, you bring up that point, and I was noticing it's starting to peek out from behind the clouds now is the sun, but we were running about 7, 8, 9 laps there just moments ago with the track bathed in cloud cover. Looks like maybe a little bit of cloud cover again over here in 1 and 2. I don't know if that would necessarily cool the track down drastically enough for these drivers to be feeling looser now than if the track itself was bathed in sunlight. Don't know if you'd get that drastic a decrease in track temperature, but I almost wonder if maybe that might be affecting these trucks here on the long run as well.
Well, if you want to wonder how much the track has cooled down, currently we're at 106 degrees. Earlier in the race, when you pointed it out, we were at about 114, so we've dropped about 8 degrees in track temperature, and that's enough to make quite a bit of a difference. Typically, you only see that change happen entry, center of the corner, but for guys that are getting tight in the center of the corner, it might be helping their turn now that the track is starting to cool down a little bit, which can help guys that were struggling on the exit with a snap loose kind of get a better balance in it. But guys who already had a really good center of the corner might be getting a little bit extra loose like we see with our leader.
Saw Braxton Dewis on pit road, and as you documented, more than likely can't make it to the conclusion of this race. He did take on a set of tires, but I was assuming that was his last set of tires. Actually, I had a bit of a memo misread, if you will. These drivers had 3 additional sets of tires on pit road outside of the set they started on, so he does have another set waiting for him should he want them, which now makes me almost wonder, even though he's fallen a lap down, most of these guys I would assume would be on the one-stop strategy on this final stage. Could Braxton Dewis be on a 2-stop strategy, feeling that that fresh rubber could maybe gain him something off sequence from everybody else, maybe kind of throw in a Hail Mary strategy?
I do not believe that that's the strategy here. He would have to find his way caught up to the pack and past them before this pack makes their pit stop for a 2-stop to work. You simply just lose too much time, and these guys don't really lose as much time as some of the other vehicles over a long run at this racetrack. I mean, they're only running about a second to maybe 1.2 seconds slower than the beginning of their run, so the fall off is not that drastic compared to what it could be.
You saw he was on the same straightaway as the leaders. You'll see him probably here just off turn 4, yep, right there. So he could maybe catch up to these guys, get his lap back, and get on the tail of the lead lap. I'm actually looking at the lap times right now. Your race leader, Ryan Strunk, last time by, ran in the 41.2s. Braxton Dewis ran a half second faster in the 40.7s, and that's without the aid of draft running all by himself.
Yeah, the issue is, though, you lose almost a full lap around here, coming down the pitway and entry, exit. and any mistakes that you may have on the pit lane. And so he would have to essentially run over 40 laps a second a lap faster than his competitors to really make up that lap time and make a two-stop strategy worthwhile.
You brought up mistakes on pit road. We know these drivers are going to have to come down to the attention of their crews before this race is over. How difficult is it? Wow, that was close for Strunk off of 2. He nearly shook hands with the outside safer barrier, but how difficult is it for these drivers to back these trucks down, get them onto pit road safely, and then make sure they execute getting into their pit stalls safely at a track like Michigan?
I feel this is actually one of the racetracks where it's a lot easier to underdrive the pit entry, because from the racetrack down to the pit lane, you could see it very far away, unlike some other tracks where you're kind of blind going into it. And so you might, because of your practice at other facilities, brake at a certain point and realize, oh, I could have braked way later to get into this pit lane, and that's where a lot of time is gained or lost, more so than anywhere else at this track.
Saw after that big slide by Ryan Strunk, Robert Shin was able to close up the gap. It's now 2.5 tenths of a second. Running a half groove lower there through turns 3 and 4, trying to get the clean air to the nose as Robert Shin. Just like that, what was about half a second between first and second has turned into a battle for the lead, maybe a three-way battle for the lead, because here comes Chuck Waldrop. He's shaking loose Patrick Stein, and he's now up here to play with the top 2 drivers as well.
Yeah, I've been watching Strunk. He's just been straddling that seam, and that's been really costing him a lot, because if he goes even a slight bit lower, which he's done multiple times already, it gets him extremely loose on the corner I mean, you see it right here. He's in between the 2 lanes, and right there he gets twitchy loose. That's going to allow a big run here for Shin going down the front straightaway.
Saw right there with that shot in turn 4, had that left front on that seam, and it almost was like the truck didn't want to turn. That front wheel, that front left wheel sliding when it hit that seam area, pushing him up the track and allowing Robert Shin to close back up the gap. Now about a truck length and a half between these two. And much like super speedway racing, if the 73 can get up alongside the 77, the side draft will stall both of them out, and that will most certainly bring Chuck Waldrop into this battle as well.
Well, it looks like even on his own, Waldrop's starting to make up a little bit of time on these drivers. So we may see a bit of a three-way fight here for the victory as Strunk started to fall off. All these guys need to do is battle for a couple laps, and Waldrop's right in the middle of it. Actually, here comes Dewis on the newer tires as well to kind of throw a bit of a wrench in their plans here, possibly separate them out a little bit or close them up.
Braxton Dewis about 20 lap fresher tires on that 8 truck, trying to get his lap back here. If he can get around the 77 of Ryan Strunk, he will have gotten himself back onto the lead lap here under green flag conditions, as he'll look low here to the inside of turn 4. Ooh, got that left front down there on that yellow line. That's just as slippery as the seams, that paint line there, but he will clear in front of Ryan Strunk, and so Dewis is back on the lead lap, and Ryan Strunk might maybe here for the moment ride behind the 8, try and see if he can save some fuel, because that's another thing that we have to think about. Tires obviously I think are the biggest talking point for these guys, but if you consider the fuel window for these guys also, the 73 has spent so much time behind the 77. 77's been creating that slipstream, that draft for Robert Shin to maybe be able to save a lap or two, while out in that clean air, Ryan Strunk has been at the deficit in terms of how far he can make it with what's in the tank.
Well, I don't think there was really much of any lifting there from Robert Shin. This isn't really a racetrack where you could save too much by lifting. You kind of see that a bit more in the Cup Series vehicles, but not as much in these Truck Series cars. And you see it right there. I was not a big fan of that line from Shin. He kind of ran very high and had to cross across the seams very late in the corner. That kind of cost him a little bit in the center. Gonna have to be watching out, because Shin has definitely got a lot of pace, and all he needs is just one better pit stop, and he'll be right on top of him as these runs are going back and forth between the two of them.
Great action on the racetrack right now, but to your point, it could be that trip to pit road, potentially the last trip to pit road, that's going to be the deciding factor into who's taking this checkered flag and who is not. If drivers were planning on splitting this final stage in half, it'd be right around this point in time, so we'll see if there's any hands out the window of drivers coming to pit lane, or if they will stretch it as far as these tires and this fuel can possibly go. Rather low there on the back straight for Strunk. Not sure if he's just snaking his way down, trying to cut the draft for Robert Shin, or if he may be indicating he could be coming to pit lane this time.
Well, typically, if you're going to see him come down in the pit lane, it'll most likely be running the bottom lane down in 3 and 4, but Robert Shin is going to make the move first. He's going to jump Strunk when he comes out of the pit lane. He split this stage pretty much in half, about 35, 36 laps. I feel like that's going to give the advantage to Strunk, but he's got to see if, with how many laps are left, if he can make up whatever time he's going to lose from these new tires for one lap.
Executed the entry onto pit road perfectly, got the truck down to 55-mile-per-hour pit speed. Let's see about him getting into his stall here, and it looks like he is going to, well, nope, he did overshoot it, and that was something I was a little bit worried about, watching these guys slip and slide around here on the asphalt. It's an asphalt to concrete transition from pit road to pit stall, and a lot of times we'll see drivers slide those front tires, overshoot their mark, and much like at a super speedway, just that little mistake of having to back the truck up can cost you a lot of positions and a lot of track time once everything cycles around.
All right, well, Shin has gone a lap down, but that next lap, Ryan Strunk reacted, although he's going to overshoot his box by a long bit, kick it back into reverse. That is an extremely costly mistake for Ryan Strunk. That may have just cost him the victory right there.
So about 0.8 of a second lost by Robert Shin on his pit stop. We'll see how much time was lost for Strunk. Well, surprisingly, looks like maybe about, let's say, half a second lost with his mistake. Now here's Chuck Waldrop, who was the third driver in that party for the race lead. He's coming down pit road with Patrick Stein. Let's see if he can execute getting into his box perfectly, because that could be him maybe cycling out to the race lead.
I'm surprised to see... I'm trying to see where everybody's coming out at the moment, but it looks like Strunk got out significantly ahead of Robert Shin. Curious as to how that happened with that big mistake from Strunk. I actually am not sure who's going to end up winning this race by this point. I think just the newer tires didn't really make as much of a difference. I want to see where Waldrop comes out relative to this, because he was relatively close to the leaders and he pit later than the rest of them. He's going to have better pace at the back end of this run, but at the moment, Ryan Strunk looks to be in control of this.
Going to be a huge lead from Ryan Strunk back to, looks like Chuck Waldrop will cycle out to second with Patrick Stein. Now maybe these two trucks can draft together to get up there to Ryan Strunk, but they're going to have to make up about 4.5 seconds once everything cycles around. Braxton Dewis right now, your current race leader. Of course, he is way off sequence from everybody else. He was on pit lane about 18 laps ago. We saw him just recently get the lap back that he lost with that green flag pit stop, but pretty certain he cannot make it the rest of the way without coming to pit lane. And you see right there Ryan Strunk on what would be almost 20 lap fresher tires, reeling him in rather quickly.
Yeah, sadly for the case of Dewis, it's just a matter of the pace was just not in it today. The vehicle was quite a bit off. And after this pit stop cycle, it's with the gap that Ryan Strunk has, it may look like a simple Ryan Strunk victory, as no other driver was able to capitalize in the pit lane and take advantage of the time gained or lost through there.
But I like the strategy for Braxton Dewis, though, because, you know, you take the green flag, you know you're not going to finish any worse than 7th. Boyd Hogan back in the garage, so now you know you're going to finish no lower than 6th. You're already locked into the playoffs. Why not go out there, try some unorthodox strategy, maybe see if you can pick yourself up a checkered flag and subsequently some playoff points, because right now, coming into this race for the regular season standings, Braxton Dewis is the only driver inside the top 4 in points that does not have any playoff points heading into the postseason.
Yeah, not having any playoff points really is a big struggle once you finally get into the playoffs, because that's just the ultimate reset. You pretty much have nothing else to lay on. Despite having a good season otherwise, your season's essentially just reset by that point, because the playoff points is the only thing to really determine how well you did. And to have none pretty much just puts them in line with everybody else.
The playoffs going to be beginning at the end of August at the Lady in Black Darlington. But before we get there, in 2 weeks' time, as these drivers have an off week next week, August 17th is the regular season finale here on the Flatout Racing Network. And these drivers will be taking to Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park, so be sure to tune in for that one, as we will then know officially the 10 drivers that will be battling for this season's championship. Battle for third place, soon to maybe be battle for second place, seems to be the best battle on track right now. Patrick Stein just a couple laps ago got around Chuck Waldrop, and he appears to be pulling away. So Patrick Stein, who started this race from the 6th position, we saw him get a little bit of damage during the first stage, getting up into the outside wall. He may be in line here tonight for his first finish on the podium. Maybe one of the drivers 50 laps into the run that we didn't necessarily think could get up there inside of the top 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, he just kind of hung around the back half, the top 5, pretty much this entire race. Didn't really put his name out there in the big picture, but when it comes to this long green flag run, he's kind of taking advantage of running through the pit stops better, making his adjustments correctly, and getting a better vehicle here at the end. And, he is making up some surprisingly significant time on our leader by a good bit. Ryan Strunk actually just ran a surprisingly slow set of laps. 2 41-second lap times. That's not what should be happening to his vehicle. What is going on with our leader?
Well, maybe one of two things. Maybe still dealing with that loose sensation we saw him have, or could he maybe be backing down his pace just a little bit, saving his tires for eventually the possibility of a Patrick Stein or Chuck Waldrop getting to his back bumper. I mean, we've already seen what these trucks are like, how they slip and slide around when they're long into a run, and more than likely these guys now are running to the checkered flag on the good years they currently have. Maybe just kind of conserving for the moment might be the race leader.
I would not call it conserving, because he is running slower lap times than where he was running at the end of the last run. I believe I just saw him drop the clutch down into turn 1. He is saving fuel, it looks like.
And I'm almost wondering, is it possible to adjust the amount of fuel that is put into your truck even when you're on pit lane before you pull into your pit stall?
I mean, you can do that, but I would question why he would not fill it up to full. I mean, we went the same number of laps to that pit stop as what is remaining left in the race, and like I mentioned earlier, typically you're able to get almost about 40 laps in on a pit cycle for fuel. So I would question saving fuel here, because he should be able to make it to the finish.
Well, the theory I'm kind of working on here is we saw him have that big slide past his pit stall. He had to back the truck up. I'm wondering if, to compensate for the time lost on that mistake, he might have maybe taken on a little bit less fuel to maybe get that time back. I mean, I'm looking right now, Robert Shin, when he had his overshoot, he still spent about 15.2 seconds in his pit stall, but Ryan Strunk only spent 14.4 seconds in his pit stall. So I'm almost wondering if maybe might have made an adjustment to his pit stop to compensate for the time lost for the pit stall overshoot in the case of the 77 car.
Well, either he's listening to the broadcast or he's finally calculated the numbers. He picked his lap times back up to a 40.4, which was the fastest on the racetrack that last time by, other than, I believe, Dewis, who just took a brand new set of tires. No, actually, even then, he ran slightly faster. So I think Strunk has finally gotten the truck back in gear, But I am curious as to what had happened for those 3 laps that he decided to drop the clutch and run that slowly, because I do not expect fuel to be a question with when these guys pit.
And in those laps that he did that, he ended up losing what was about a 4.5-second gap. It's now been cut down to about a little more than 2 seconds back to Patrick Stein. Now, he and Waldrop are running about 3-4 truck lengths apart here. I was noticing when they left pit lane, they were nose to tail. If the 7 can get up here to the back bumper of the 98, would drafting as a 2-truck tandem help them in any way to reel in Ryan Strunk, or is this one of those kind of racetracks where that doesn't benefit you just based on the fact that second truck's going to get so tight, he's not really going to be able to keep touch with you if he's running the same line you are?
The way these open setups typically are made is that they are typically ran a little bit on the looser end to really roll through the center of the corner better. So you could in theory run a tandem draft around here. The problem is the corners slow down so much compared to the straightaways that the really only tandem would be, rather than making a pass on somebody from the draft on the straightaway, would just be to bump them instead. Now, the problem I am seeing on the racetrack at the moment is that we know Ryan Strunk pit before the 2 drivers trying to run him down. And he just ran almost 2/10 slower that previous lap than Patrick Stein in the 2nd position. And there's less than a 2-second gap with 20 laps to go. That would give enough time for Patrick Stein to catch up to him without the draft that he will get by catching up a full second.
So things could get interesting here in the final 20 laps of this race. Ryan Strunk, ever since Boyd Hogan had his mechanical problem, has been the class of the field. But can he close it out? Patrick Stein, Chuck Waldrop may have something to say about this before all is said and done. We're going to step aside for our final commercial break of the evening. You're watching the MSRA Reaper Speedlab Truck Series from Michigan International Speedway here on FRN. We're taking you side by side.
Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engines. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCar. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you can only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engines. Welcome, race fans. This is Paul Page, the voice of IndyCars. And today we're excited to present another IndyCar event brought to you by the Dark Horse IndyCar Series. From the Unzers to Mears, Foyt, and Andretti, now it's Corley, Peterson, Davies, Gardner, and Teague. You can expect high speeds, incredible wheel-to-wheel action, and intense drama that you could only get in an IndyCar. So sit back and enjoy your favorite drivers from all over the world take the track. Dark Horse IndyCar drivers, start your engine.
Closing in on 10 laps remaining here tonight at the Michigan International Speedway. Ryan Strunk continuing to show the way, and any battle we have potentially for the race lead seems to have now dissipated. Strunk has opened up the gap now by over 2.5 seconds back to Patrick Stein. It's then another 0.4 of a second back to Chuck Waldrop. So if we have any battle here in the closing stages, it more than likely is going to be for this runner-up position, unless Ryan Strunk makes a mistake, or we see our second caution of the day. We've only seen one yellow flag for the stage caution, but there's no saying that a late race yellow might not happen here still.
Well, that's remains to be seen. I highly doubt with the way these vehicles are handling and the separation between competitors that we are going against.
Oh man, big slide there by Stein. That almost was nearly the caution I was speaking of.
You know, these people are really trying very, very hard. The moment I say anything, they decide to make it crazy. But it kind of looked like there that Patrick Stein was getting really, really tight right in the center. He put a lot of wheel in that vehicle, crossed over the seam, and right when he did, that's when that vehicle got loose. But luckily, was able to save it and continue. Now the battle is going to be between him and Waldrop for the second position.
Waldrop getting around now. He'll have about 2.5 truck lengths back to Patrick Stein. And of course, that slide there too is going to heat up the tire temps on the 98. He'll be losing some grip here as he'll attempt to get the second spot back away from Chuck Waldrop in the 7. That's about the loosest, though, that we've seen a driver off of turn 2. So very impressed, very surprised that Stein was able to gather the thing back up. That's why I reacted the way I did, because I thought more than likely, with it being as loose as it was, that truck was going to snap around.
Yeah, luckily these vehicles do have a lot of a big wall, you could say, for a side of the truck. So when this thing gets out in the air like that and gets that loose, it'll just kind of save itself sometimes. But the battle is not over yet between these two. Waldrop definitely has the advantage, obviously not having a big error like that, but Patrick Stein had been faster prior to that happening to him. So this is going to be a close battle here to the finish, while Strunk, almost 4 seconds ahead, pulls away.
Ryan Strunk, we saw there during the commercial break, running in the slipstream of Braxton Dewis, who is right now on the tail end of the lead lap, of course, that we've documented off sequence with his strategy to everybody else. And we think that that could have been part and parcel of why he was able to open up the gap, talking about Ryan Strunk getting that little bit of draft, getting that tow from the 8 truck.
Yeah, the draft around here really is a massive help, and you know, the handling is a very, very big deal, but when everybody is really, really close on handling, having that extra bit of draft definitely gives you a lot of extra pace. But that's kind of what we're seeing between the two drivers going at it for the second position, is that Patrick Stein definitely looks like he's handling a little bit worse than Waldrop, but he's getting the straightaway speed from this draft and gets into the corners a lot quicker. It's just a matter of every time he gets through the corner, he's not able to keep it up on exit.
You know, an idea there on Ryan Strunk. We saw him several times really loose through the center of the corner. Could maybe have running in the draft of Braxton Dewis, as we saw him do, could that have maybe caused a little bit of aero tightness, which then kind of countered the looseness of that right rear that we saw, maybe make the handling of his truck just a tiny bit better?
Well, very well could be at the same time, because, you know, you might not have the extra turn in the center that kind of makes you unknowingly turn down onto that seam, which was the big problem that Strunk was having on the previous run. So being in that dirty air and getting a little bit tight, he might have just been running a better line as well.
Ryan Strunk, provided he doesn't put a wheel wrong, he's a little less than 14 miles away from picking up his first win on the season. Ryan Strunk, prior to tonight, only had one top 10 finish coming into this evening's race, and that was last week when these drivers were at the tricky triangle of Pocono. So, going to be his best finish by far in his Reaper Speedlab Truck Series career, and going to be another different driver going to victory lane here this season. We know that Braxton Dewis, he's going to continue to keep himself up in the top 3 in the point standings. Boyd Hogan, despite the fact he DNF'd tonight, is not going to get some additional playoff points.
Waldrop got super loose in the second position. I saw him come off turn 2 and nearly tail whip it into the wall. Patrick Stein's now gotten to his rear bumper.
Yeah, I know Waldrop wants to get his best finish of his Reaper Speedlab Truck Series career, but as we saw that mistake there, if I'm him, just make sure you bring that truck home in one piece, because whether he finishes second or whether he finishes third, he's probably going to be the big winner here tonight in terms of the playoffs. Came into this race with a pretty sizable cushion back to the cutoff line, but certainly would be a huge sigh of relief for him tonight. Get the maximum amount of points he's possibly able to get inside of the podium, and make sure that you go into IRP in 2 weeks' time knowing you are locked into the playoff grid regardless of where you finish in that race. Because, we talk about a lot of the tracks that series will have for their season finale. Some of them have the super speedway of Daytona, other of them will have it at a short track like Bristol, and we're at a short track in IRP. A lot can happen at a track like that. And so, when you can go into a racetrack like that and a race like that in a regular season finale, knowing you're already locked in, it's got to give you not only a sense of confidence, but a sense of relief.
Oh yeah, for certain. IRP is definitely quite a chaotic place, and so feeling a lot more secure going into that race is always a good thing, because it's almost the polar opposite of Michigan International Speedway, you could say.
This next time by, it will be 3 laps to go for Ryan Strunk, continuing to run in the slipstream of Braxton Dewis. As a matter of fact, he might be reeling him in. Dewis, who has the fresher Goodyears, may have used them up trying to gap himself from the 77. So we got to keep an eye on what goes on here with Strunk in close proximity to another machine with less than 3 laps to go. This race may not be over just yet. That might be why the battle for second place could be just as important now as it was 10 laps ago.
Well, the important part of the battle for second place is that there's 2 drivers extremely close to each other with only a couple laps to go when they cross the line this time by. That is never a good sign for trying to avoid a caution, because it seemed like Patrick Stein has started to get the handle a little bit better, especially down through turns 1 and 2 over Chuck Waldrop. And he's got to be careful, because if he gets a little bit too close, maybe a little bit of contact, we could see the caution come out here.
Yeah, if you're Ryan Strunk, you're trying to turn the fastest 2 miles of your life right now. Get back there, have the flagman display the white flag, so therefore the next flag would end the race, as he will do so this time out of turn number 4. 1 more lap around Michigan International Speedway for the 77 of Ryan Strunk, as he'll look to the top side there on Braxton Dewis. Not certain I would battle with the 8 truck right now, who I'm certain would like to finish this race on the tail end of the lead lap.
Well, he could just be putting a bit of a show in it. As long as he gives Dewis a lot of space, it shouldn't hopefully be an issue, but I'd personally rather not risk it, as he takes it to the inside of Dewis down into turn 3. Might as well just have some fun with it. Just as long as he doesn't spin out, make any contact, he'll come off turn 4 all nice and clean, and looks like a cruise to the victory for Ryan Strunk at Michigan International Speedway.
First win of his Reaper Speedlab Truck Series career. Waldrop brings it home across the stripe in second. Patrick Stein follows him in third. But here tonight, Ryan Strunk, whose best finish up to this point was 10th, is going to eclipse that this evening. He's going to take the checkered flag here in the Irish Hills, newest winner here in the MSRA, and makes things interesting in terms of the point standings and who's going to get playoff points heading into next race, the regular season finale, because the playoff points all went to a driver that's not running for points here this season. Ryan Strunk, not only the winner of the race, but also picked up, kind of canceled out that playoff point with the stage victory earlier on tonight as he begins the celebration on the front straightaway.
Ryan Strunk, our dominant victor tonight. Might have looked like he had some competition from Boyd Hogan early on in the event, but after the engine failure on that 96 truck, it has pretty much allowed this 77 to cruise to a victory, though not without challenge in the mid portion of this event.
Yeah, got a couple of challenges, one from Chuck Waldrop, one from Robert Shin, but able to keep all of them at bay. Had that little bit of mishap on pit road, but was able to recover nicely, and he gets to celebrate here tonight at Michigan International Speedway here in Brooklyn, Michigan. As his celebration continues, let's take a look at the finishing results from tonight's festivities. As mentioned, only 7 drivers completing tonight's event. Waldrop with the runner-up finish, Patrick Stein in third. So for the top 3, actually I believe for the entire top 5, their best finishes of the season. Robert Shin there in fourth, and Wesley Jeanette, who was dealing with aero damage for a majority of this race, going to get that 5th position. Braxton Dewis tried a little bit of different strategy. Didn't work out for him, but he'll still bring it home in the 6th position on the tail end of the lead lap. Boyd Hogan was the only retiree, as he had the engine failure just prior to the completion of stage 1. Now, the rest of the drivers you see here on the finishing results were drivers that entered into the server, but did not get on track for the grid. I'm not certain if they're going to get credited for those positions points-wise or not. However, I believe for all of them, Delaney, Cooley, Phillip, and Jurgensen, they do not run for points anyway, so that will not in any way, shape, or form affect the point standings in regards to the playoffs heading into our next race at IRP. But let's see if we can now go down trackside and talk with our podium finishers. See if we have any of them on standby, and it looks like, at least for the moment, we're going to go down to victory lane. Tonight's race winner, Ryan Strunk, is standing by. Hey, Ryan, it's Alex and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got a copy?
I got a copy, fellas.
Man, I'll tell you what. Strong truck here this evening. Looked like everybody out there slipping and sliding in the midway to latter stages of the green flag runs. But what were some of the fundamentals, some of the elements you guys were having to deal with out here today, especially even though you had the benefit of clean air?
Yeah, the big thing is just you can't just keep it floored. You got to actually just crack the throttle just a touch, especially in the middle of the corner. Let the truck rotate. But tell you what, I got lucky with Boyd Hogan having those engine troubles. I didn't know if I had anything for him, but I think me and the crew could have done a couple adjustments and had something for him maybe.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much answered the question I was about to ask. Is that, did you think you had something for him? Because you looked pretty competitive with him, even towards the end of that run, only being slightly faster. And, I mean, after that problem, did you think you were going to get the contention from behind that you did in the mid portion of this run?
Yeah, I don't know what these guys did to their truck on that stage break, but yeah, they really stepped it up. I also learned quite a bit riding behind Boyd there. That's where I figured out, as far as throttle goes, more is or less is more, So just a hard track, slipping and sliding, like you said, hot surface. Awesome to get a win here at Michigan. That's just like an hour and a half away from my house. So home win, pretty awesome. First MSRA win. Can't be more excited.
Always cool when you get a home track win. Now, a difficult track, as you mentioned, but we also saw a pretty difficult pit road. A lot of you drivers that were up there towards the front having some pit road miscues, overshooting your pit stalls. So, I mean, as a driver, how do you kind of reset and get yourself back in the mentality of I'm still in this, knowing that you lost maybe a little bit of time with the pit road miscue?
Yeah, you can't really get too caught up in the moment, especially during green flag cycles. You just gotta see where you come out at and just start chipping away. And luckily, I don't know how he came out in front. Braxton had a pretty good truck under him, but I think he was off cycle with his pitting. So it's honestly these races are so competitive that you got to be good, and then you also got to have some luck fall your way. You know what I mean?
Well, definitely check the boxes on both of those. A good truck and did have that little bit of luck fall your way there towards the end of the first stage. But congratulations on a job well done here this evening. Obviously, we could see the elation with the celebration you had there on the front straightaway. And now you got one more job. We're going to hand that mic over to you and let you do some victory lane thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Oh, absolutely. Just want to give a shout out to my crew, FSMI racing crew. I had my dad on the box, and he did awesome with the fuel mileage there. We only finished with 1.4 laps left in the tank. Got to thank my sponsor, Kathy at Guaranteed Rate. She uh she made it possible for us to go out to these setup traps and get the setups to be competitive. And then I really got to just thank the MSRA Reaper Truck Series officials. Can't Without a series, there's no races to win. And got to thank you guys up in the FRN booth, man. These broadcasts are really fun to watch, and I'm definitely gonna have a good time watching this one.
Well, close on the fuel numbers, but the hometown guy gets it done. Ryan Strunk, your winner here tonight at Michigan International Speedway. Congratulations on the victory, Ryan. Go and enjoy it, and we look forward to seeing what you've got in store for us here in the future.
Absolutely, fellas. Hopefully, we're talking soon.
So as Ryan Strunk continues the celebration down there in the Gatorade Victory Lane in the infield grass there, just in front of the pit wall on the front straightaway, it looks like we do not have the rest of our podium finishers, Chuck Waldrop or Patrick Stein, available for post-race interviews. So that is going to conclude our coverage here tonight. A smaller field than we expected, Alex, but certainly no shortage of drama. Just when we thought we had things figured out, it kind of seemed like the script would get flipped on us.
Oh, it definitely got flipped on us indeed. I mean, obviously, the big highlight and dramatic moment of this race was Boyd Hogan blowing out the motor from the lead. It looked like him and Ryan Strunk, at least at the end of stage one, were going to have a great duel at it. And I mean, by that point, we thought it was over, but the field thought otherwise and almost put a very strong challenge to Strunk. But when the green flag pit stops came around, he showed himself to be the dominant truck of the day and basically secured the victory from that point.
Talked about it at the top of the broadcast. A lot of the drivers that come into this race, into the remainder of the regular season with victories up there inside the top 10 in points, currently in securing playoff positions heading to that regular season finale. Will we be seeing them be taking the green flag in 2 weeks' time at IRP or not? That's going to be interesting to see because, a big opportunity for a lot of drivers here tonight that we don't normally see up there at the front inside the top five. As we mentioned, all of our top five finishers here tonight with their best finishes of their MSRA careers. Will that be the case in 2 weeks' time, or will we start to see those big names migrate their way back into our starting grids with the playoffs looming?
Well, I mean, that remains to be seen because these people don't give any warning when they do it. They just decide to show up. So you're going to have to show up and watch the broadcast if you want to see if these guys end up coming back or not, because it could always, 1 week to the next, go from how many we had tonight to a full field.
Absolutely. Well, these drivers will have an off week next week. They'll be back at it when we head to Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park on August 17th. Green flag will be scheduled to fly at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be bringing you that action in the regular season finale here on the Flatout Racing Network. We appreciate you joining us here tonight. for the action from the Irish Hills of Michigan International Speedway. Congratulations once again to Ryan Strunk on the victory. First of the season, first of his career. And Alex, I appreciate you joining me up here in the booth tonight.
Appreciate coming in and experiencing a brand new league for the first time, Seth. So maybe I'll be back here some other time. That's to be seen, but we're expecting to have Kyle back up in here soon enough.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again to everyone that tuned in here tonight. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks' time for the continuation of the season here for the MSRA Reaper Speed Lab Truck Series. For Alex Kolonix, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning in here tonight on this Wednesday evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.